welcome back. In today's video, we're going to do just a real quick walkthrough tutorial. I wouldn't really call it a tutorial. I'm just going to quickly show you how I did the oversized pages in the Dr. Jekyll Mr. Hyde journal that I recently did. Here, I'm going to pop a picture up of those pages so you can see what I'm talking about. So I had a lot of questions about how I bound the pages in that journal because it was a very large journal. So that's what I'm going to show you today. The Dr. Jekyll journal, the outside dimensions or the cover measured approximately 8 by 10. Let me move some of this out of the way. The cover measured about 8 by 10. And so, you know, a typical 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper is pretty close to that size. So I had a lot of people asking me how I attached the papers at the spine to be able to do that, to make those pages bound in there. And the answer to that is I didn't. Here, I will show you how I did it. What I used for my main pages in the journal were what we call a tabloid size sheet of paper. So in the United States, a letter size sheet of paper is about 8.5 by 11 inches. It's fairly close to an A4 size paper. A4 is just slightly narrower and just a tiny bit longer. So that's the size of a letter size. A tabloid size paper, this one's a little bent, sorry, is actually 2 times the size of a letter size. So there's letter piece on there, and then see, so it's actually double it. So a tabloid size sheet of paper measures 17 inches by 11 inches. 11 by 17 is a tabloid sheet of paper. And so that's what I used for the majority of the pages in that journal. And then the signature covers were Tim Holtz scrapbooking papers that measure 12 by 12. And I will show you how I did put those together. So I used tabloid sheet of paper. I coffee dyed or tea dyed most of them or all of them. Several of them I ran through my printer because I did the journal entries on there. So those I ran through my paper or my printer, and I had to change a lot of settings in there to get it to print properly, but that is what I used. So after I coffee dyed and I printed, then I trimmed my paper down to the size that I needed. But I did all my printing first. So I had to watch my margins to make sure that, you know, when I cut things off, I'm not going to be cutting off parts of my images that I wanted to leave. So if the journal cover measured about 8 by 10, that meant that when my papers were folded, when my tabloid sheets of paper were folded, I wanted them to measure about 7 3/4 inches by, or that'd be this way, by 9 1/4 high. Okay. And that fit perfectly inside my roughly 8 by 10 cover. Okay. So my tabloid sheet of paper then was 7 3/4 this way, 9 1/4 that way to fit my 8 by 10 cover. Okay. So when I unfolded them, then obviously I'm going to have 7 3/4 times 2, which is 15.5, I guess. All right. Hopefully that makes sense. All right, so after everything was trimmed to the size that I wanted, and you'll need to adjust these measurements for your own oversized book. Yours may not be 8 by 10. And so I have these 2 pieces of scrapbooking paper here that I'm going to use for these demonstrative purposes, as I don't really want to use up my really nice Tim Holtz paper just to show you something. So I'm going to use these odd pieces of scrapbook paper. And these are a little bit heavy, and that is what I used as my covers for my signatures in my journal. I usually like to have a little bit heavier for a cover. So as you can see, let me flip this over. As you can see, a piece of scrapbook paper folded isn't going to be large enough, okay? So what I did first is I took 2 matching papers and I trimmed them for the proper height first. Okay, so I want both of my matching sheets of scrapbook paper to be the same height, and I want them to be the same height as the rest of the pages in my signature. Okay, so now they're trimmed for height. The next thing I wanted to do was determine where I wanted the placement, oops, I'm sorry, I'm almost out of frame, where I wanted the placement of the pattern of my scrapbook paper. So when I was using the Tim Holtz paper, you know, there were certain designs I wanted to show up. And so let's say that in this particular piece of scrapbook paper, I want this to kind of be in the center. So I'm going to center that in my signature, see? So I'm about center right there. And you don't have to do it this way. This is just if you want to be particular, okay? And so now I know I want to trim off all of this, okay? And you may not want to do it this way because you don't want the waste, but this is the way I'm doing it. And then what I want now is to create a little, for lack of a better term, I'm going to call it a little spine area that I'm going to use to glue my other sheet of scrapbooking paper to. Okay, so I need a little fold over, and it doesn't have to be this large. Okay, it really only needs to be, you know, a little bit. So I'm going to trim this off right about there, and that gives me, you know, this much space right here to have a place to glue. Okay. Okay, so I'm not going to cut on this line. That was the line I made for my fold, just to show me. I'm going to cut on the other line I marked as my cut line. Now, I could put this through my scoreboard if I wanted to, but I'm not going to dig all of that out. And on my mark I made there, just going to take my pencil. I put the lead inside it, so I'm not drawing anything. Just kind of scored it with my ruler a little bit there, so I get a nice clean fold. Okay, so there's the front part of my signature cover. And then let's just say on this back side, I also want this little mandala thing to be in the center. So I'm just going to mark what's extra and what needs trimmed off. So mark it here, and I'm going to mark it over here. Let me pick this up and show you. Okay, so there's my folded part, and here's the part I'm going to use to glue right here, and so I'm going to cut my paper right there. Okay, and then I'm going to cut it off the edge over here. And I was a little more precise than this when I was doing the Dr. Jekyll journal. I just wanted to do this and show you how I did it. Okay. So on this fold here that we have folded over, and I'm running low on glue. Let's see if I can get enough out of this bottle to get us through just this little bit. Okay, and on the Dr. Jekyll journal, I actually went back and put these through my sewing machine and sewed them. You don't have to. If you're not going to sew them with your sewing machine, you want to make sure that you get quite a bit of glue on there, you know, enough to hold it permanently. If you're going to run it through your sewing machine, I would just put enough on there to kind of tack it down until you can get over there. Okay, so essentially what you made was 2 pieces of scrapbooking paper glued together using a little flap right there to glue them together. And so now you can sew this into your book with your signatures. Okay, so let me put my pages back in. And now I've got a signature cover and signature pages that will fit my oversized journal cover, and I can just bind it into my book like I normally would doing my pamphlet stitch or whatever my choosing is. Okay, it's as easy as that. That's how I did it. Okay, let me know if you need any help with that. If you have any questions, leave them below. Speak to you all very, very soon. Take care. Happy crafting. Bye-bye.